Hi everyone, my name is Foca and I am a teacher here in the Tara Yoga Center and now also a teacher in the Online Yoga Academy, which we offer both yoga and Tantra courses and classes both here in Europe and in the US and even in China we started now. And today we're going to speak a bit about abundance and the value of abundance on the spiritual practice and the importance of abundance from the Tantric and yogic perspective. But before we dive in the topic, let's begin with the wonderful story of Dionysus of Sinope. And he was considered to be a great philosopher and one of the happiest men in the world. And he lived in a barrel. He lived like a dog, basically. This is from him came the idea of the concept cynic, because he lived like a dog, which is Seneca in ancient Roman. And he was a mystery for everybody. And I mean, he brought the idea of happiness is completely independent. And one of the interesting things about him is the interaction that he had with Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great came from battle. He was having a great entourage around him, and he knew that that person is there in Sinope, Dionysus, and he went to see him. And it was a nice sunny day, Italy, no? And when he went to see him, he met Dionysus there, relaxing like this, sunbathing, next to his barrel where he used to sleep. And then Alexander comes close, stands, he was a mighty man, Alexander. He stands in front of him and says, I am Alexander the Great. I won this and this battle. I conquered this and this land. I am here to give you everything, anything that you want, because I heard you are a great man. And Dionysus lies like this and looks at him. Can you radiate like the sun? And Alexander says, no. Well, then can you move a little bit to your left? You're blocking the sun. And I mean, the guards of Alexander came to kill, how can you be so rude? Then Alexander moved their hand and walked away contemplative. And as he walked away, he said, if I wasn't Alexander the Great, I would like to be Dionysus from Sinope. So, today we will speak about three main topics, which of course are interlinked, all under abundance, but we will first speak about the value of abundance on the spiritual practice. Then we continue with how we can integrate this notion on the material level and the value of having a very harmonious interaction with the material level at this, on this spiritual practice, on the tantric path. And then we will conclude with the value of physical vitality, and in the end we will have an exercise that will sum it all up. But first, what is abundance? We have a lot of misconception about abundance, and we need to understand that a real abundance always comes from within, and it is a genuine, deep, and continuous state of contentment. Otherwise, you always are having this deep content state in your being, and it is a state which is existing only in the here and now. Often we consider or we think about abundance and something which is futurely projected. When I will have that, I will feel this. It never works like that. This is the way our mind tricks us to think, but the actual form of abundance is directly interlinked with our ability of fully being present in the here and now. Abundance actually is a manifestation of an overflow. An overflow first means that there is appearing an inner fulfillment. Otherwise, that which is acquired is fully fulfilling that which is within us. Now, it is very interesting that this fulfillment is an answer, or otherwise when it comes with in context with any exterior stimuli, and here we speak about fulfillment in the material plane, fulfillment with food, fulfillment with erotic contentment, whatever fulfillment it is, that inner state of fulfillment that we have when it comes, or when any exterior stimuli manifest or is interacting with that, will create a state of abundance or overflow. And this is one of the keys for that. And one of the ways of kind of understanding it from a bit of a higher perspective, the state of abundance, is that we realize that to a certain extent, in front of the immaculate, the endless abundance of creation itself, of the Creator in all his magnitude, there is nothing left to win or lose. You are in a genuine state of continuous contentment, a genuine state of continuous happiness. And this state is something that appears when we stop this constant act of comparing. And a fascinating story with actually the way abundance, or the way we relate to abundance in our world today. There's a wonderful book by Dr. Dan Ariely from Harvard in the States, which says Irrational and Not by Chance. And he described some factors that are fascinating regarding the human psyche and its relationship with abundance, and specifically with finance. First thing that is mentioned there is how we are that constantly we compare with the others, and thus we measure ourselves. The first story that is fascinating here is actually the story of Ladakh. Ladakh is in northwest India. It's a beautiful terrain, very mountainous, gorgeous place. And that area, until the 70s, they were a communal life, rural, very simple. And then in the 70s, the foreigners start to come in, traveling and so forth, the Beatles arrived in India. Until that moment, in 1970, they didn't have in their vocabulary the word poor. It was in existence. If somebody had a bit less this year, people would come and give them. I mean, it wasn't existing in the vocabulary, and we can say that the vocabulary reflects the nation or the people there. Of course, the language reflects the cultural context of that people. They didn't even have the word because it was a communal life. And then when the foreigners came, they started to compare themselves with the foreigners, and they invented the word for poor. It started to be great difficulties and great problems with alcoholism, with theft, and it didn't exist until there in those areas, and all the problems that we know nowadays, only due to the fact that they were comparing themselves to someone else. When there was just them, no element to compare to, they were as happy and as content. And I mean, you can say, oh, they didn't have much. I mean, in the 70s, whatever, what they didn't have. I mean, phones for sure they didn't have, but I don't know. They didn't have a Volkswagen, which was common in the 70s, whatever. But they were as happy, if not much happier, than those foreigners who came, but they were comparing, oh, look, they have a Kodak camera, and they have this thing, and they have those clothes, and they can change clothes. I don't have that. And then due to the fact that they were comparing, they always felt that they have less. And wonderfully, Chris Boyce mentioned the following: earning £1 million a year appears to be not enough to make you happy if you know that your friends are making £2 million. And it's fascinating because, I mean, it's not like you are in a direct competition, but it's simply the way the mind works. The mind constantly works on comparisons. And it's very interesting, until I think it was 70s or 80s, it was companies didn't publish their wages. And then also the CEO didn't know how much other CEOs. And the moment they started to share that information, there started to be the fight of the 1%. They were fighting who has more zeros in their account. And the difference in salaries grew exponential on that level just because they were starting to confront with one another. Now, those are people that it really doesn't matter if they have 10 million or 100 million. How much can you spend? But it is a matter of the way they falsely think they will have abundance in their life and they will reach that. Just how false is that mechanism. And actually, from the yogic and tantric perspective, it's mentioned that in the core of illusion, as we call in the yogic tradition, Maya, the literal translation of Maya is comparison. The world, as we know it, the illusion is comprised of constant comparison between things. When we reach a state which is incomparable, as they call it, even the state of transcending comparing, transcending the duality, we will perceive the genuine abundance which is always there. As long as we are constantly having this state of comparing ourselves with the other, with that, with this, we are diminishing the value even of ourselves, and we constantly will have less than the other ones. Or if we have more, it's not because we have more to give, we have more because we want to have more than the one next to us. Now, the interesting thing with abundance and the real form of abundance, if we will look at it a bit more attentively, we will realize that real abundance is our ability to use everything which is at hand at any given moment. The lack of abundance always says that I don't have things next to me, I need to look and search for it somewhere else. I mean, it manifests in relationship, finance, life, solving problems, anything. It is outside of me. The real abundance is the understanding that things lies within us and around us, and in any given moment we are given all possible aspects to solve any problem or any aspect that we are confronted with. Now, I don't know, I see some of you I know, so you did live in the 80s. There was the wonderful show of MacGyver. I don't know if you remember, for those who didn't live, excuse me, you're just too young for that. But MacGyver it was a TV show, and he was always solving any problems with just things that was around him. I mean, he was a private detective, and when he needed to solve an issue, whatever, to bomb, he had something to do, he used to find 3 matches, a bit of sellotape and something, a nail, and he used to make a rocket and save the day. I mean, beyond the show, that was pretty ridiculous in many ways, but he had a very nice state. The state that he had is that always around me, I have what I need in order to solve that problem. He was very imaginative. And people which are abundant will constantly look what's around them and will find the solution to their life, to all of life situations. Those who lack abundance will always feel that they need something else to complete, And interestingly enough, they will live a very poor life. And here we come to a very important understanding, that abundance is the true reality of our soul. We are endowed with abundance by birth. The soul is abundant in its nature, that which lies within us. And interestingly enough, we are like beggars sitting on a mountain of gold. Imagine that analogy, that you are there and you have all this richness inside of you. You are abundantly having all the possibilities, all the potential. You are extremely rich within, and you don't know it. And you sit there on top of the mountain of gold, and you beg. You beg the others for a bit of love. You beg for others for a bit of attention. You beg others for a bit of money for you. And I mean, the mentality of a beggar. And we live today in a world which is filled with beggars. I mean, and we are all sitting on a mountain of gold. How inverted is this world? And it's all due to the shift in our state of mind, in our relationship with those aspects. Now, real abundance, or the spiritual formation of abundance, comes when we use all that we were given. And each one of us were given something else. I mean, Rashmi was given something else, Malu was given something else, Sally was given something else. I mean, those of you who have cameras on, I put you as examples. Each one of you are endowed with other elements, and the real abundance is to use that which you always have. To use the gift that you have received. This is the way you mobilize yourself in the or in tune, or you're tuning yourself with this real abundance, or with this continuous overflow. And it manifests, the idea of experimenting with that means that in every given moment, in every day of our life, we take it and we are aiming to give from ourselves the best, all the gifts that we have inside of us, all the radiance of our heart, and we will notice that the more we give, the more we have. Now, I know it was already said on Facebook many times with many other people, but the principle behind it is very true. And because this is a very important force idea here, is that the outflow determines the inflow. The outflow of energy, the amount of energy that we give, will determine the amount of energy that we later on receive. And then the more you are having, of course, the inflow, and you manage to continue the outflow, this will grow exponentially. We often consider the other way around, that the outflow will determine that the inflow determines an outflow. So how much I get, this is how much I can give. But actually, the more I am able to give, because I am very rich, as we described beforehand, we are sitting on a mountain of gold, then the more we can then give forward. And I mean, out of this, we can extrapolate to many areas of our life. I mean, very simple is that when in a relationship, in many relationships, we are staying there and we're constantly waiting to be loved. And when we are waiting to be loved, we are not abundantly loving. We are waiting for the inflow of love, right? And often the two might be waiting for the inflow of love, and then what happened gradually, that there is very little interaction because the two components here, the man and woman in this case, are both waiting for one another. But what will happen if one decides to give without anything else? And then the other one will start to have this inflow, and then the other one will give, and they will create this wonderful interaction. This often is what's happening in the beginning of a relationship. It's just one expression of that. But this doesn't just work in a relationship. It works with the world. When you are in this setup of giving, when you are in the setup of abundance, when you are in the setup of the outflow, this will constantly determine the inflow that will arrive in your life and the exponential growth of the amount of energy accessible to you. We have a concept that we say, I keep some things to myself because I want to have it later. I keep some love, I will not give it because I want to have it later. I keep the things inside because I want, and eventually we don't use what we are having to keep it for later, and what we haven't used will not be accessible for us later. Every moment of our life calls us to use everything we have. And when we use everything we have in every moment of our life, more will be given to us. You can imagine it like a barrel. Only if you empty it fully, you give everything, or let's have it as percentage-wise. You give your 100% in a day. If you give all of it in a day, tomorrow you'll get another 100%. Because the creation itself is full of abundance. It gives. But if you, out of the 100% that you give, you spend only 10%, because 90% you save for a rainy day, you keep to yourself, you don't manifest love, you're not generous, you don't manifest this, you keep. What actually happens there? In the end of the day, you used only 90%. And then you use only 10%, 90% remains. And then the day after, you say that 90% is not accessible for you anymore, because anyhow you don't use them. You get from the universe only 10%. And by receiving only 10% like that, you become gradually poorer and poorer. And we live in a society which is paradoxically so seemingly rich on the outside, and yet so obviously poor on the inside, manifesting exactly this. It's a paradox. And that paradox is born from the misunderstanding of the genuine way of relating to abundance, and specifically to giving. Now here comes a beautiful story about the difference that exists between heaven and hell. And this is a story of a very righteous man, and this righteous man have passed away, and then as he passed away, he went up to heavens, and of course he met there Peter with the keys. And Peter told him, look, you've been wonderful servants in this world, and you have the choice now to, before you go to heaven, to see, ask for one thing. And then the man who was very righteous was contemplating, I have one thing that I was all my life contemplating about. What is exactly the difference between heaven and hell? The angel says, no problem, let me show you. And they go into this fancy lift. What do you want to see first, the heaven or the hell? And I said, let's start with hell. Finish nicely. And they press on the lift, 1 million floors goes down. They open the door, and in front of this righteous man and the angel, he has there a huge hall, but immense, all marble, shining, beautiful. In the middle of the hall, he has this table, which is long, filling with all the most delicious gifts that one can imagine. And the guy, stunned, looked at us. This is hell? I mean, where is the fire? Where is the... And the angel just looked at him for a second and said, wait. At the back of the hall, the doors open and rush in hungry people, and they sit aligned along the table. And in front of all of them, there is this wonderful bowl of soup. And when he looks attentively, he sees that each one of them has a very long spoon, like seriously long, unusually long. And then he sees something very interesting, that all of them are having this very long spoon, and they are trying to get from the soup, and it cannot go into their mouth because of the length, and they are starving in hell. And then he realized, whoa, that is actually hell. And then, of course, he tells the heaven, to the angel, now show me heaven. And the angel invites him there. Go back in the lift, 200 million floors above. They open the door, and to the surprise of the man, heaven looks exactly the same. Marble, delicious food, luminous light. How can it be? The door opens on the other side, same group of people, and the man is curious, and he looks next to them, and each one of them even has exactly the same spoon. But the difference between heaven and hell is that in heaven, they all lift the spoon and feed one another. The main difference between heaven and hell, also in our life, and there is a gamut here, is how much we give. A world that we want to live in is the world which is full of giving. I think we can all be in concordance about that. But the first thing we need to do, we need to resonate with that world. A world which we all want to live is an abundant world, abundant with love, with richness, with joy. We need to be the first one to give that. A world which we all want to live is a world in which there is this expansion and there is this connection. We need to be the first to connect. We need to be the first to give. And the real abundance is learned when we are always the first to do so. I mean, we are in this false education, born a little bit from the Disney, Hollywood, that things just happen. Things not just happen. We need to create it, and we need to make this life for what it is. And we do so by giving. And when we understand that we are those rich and abundant human beings, our soul is abundant with love, and we can give it then forward. This is when we are creating the world which we all want to live. Now you see, the abundance as a state is very much like the sun. I think we have somebody who has his mic on. And the sun, if you think about it, this world, nothing will be alive on this world without the sun, and not just without the sun, without the exact angle in which we are with the sun, the exact distance. I mean, if we were just a few centimeters, 2 in, 2 out, we would be all gone. Maybe we look also in the chat, because I see that many there. And we are definitely like the sun. And this, or Life is existing only due to the sun. Now, we have this analogy of the symbol of abundance, the symbol of multitude, which is actually the sun itself. The sun is radiating in all directions and is constant. I mean, here in England, unfortunately, May was great, but unfortunately now we don't have much sun. It doesn't mean the sun isn't there, by the way. The sun is always there. We are having these clouds, which like this island very much, which then we think, oh, there is no sun. But one of the moments that we all love very much, now it seems like a distant memory, but we all experience it. The moment when you go in the flight and you know, it's a cloudy day, and then you have this moment and you pierce above the clouds, and then it's eternally sunny. This is the way I could say that is God's sun, or the way God is giving, the way the Creator is constantly there for the creation. And this consistency of the sun always present there. This is what always gives life to everything around it. And we can take the symbol as something that we want to be aligned with. We can be like the sun, radiating in all directions. The sun is spheric. The sun doesn't just radiate in one direction. It's a very hot ball, if physically, that radiates 360. We can be exactly the same when we are abundant in all areas of our life, in all aspects of existence, constantly pulsating this heat, in this case, or this life, the abundance of our heart. Not by chance, they give a lot of analogies with the sun, and we even have the sun day, which is the day of the sun, dedicated for the spirit, dedicated for this endless abundance of the heart. Now, wonderfully, this is a quote of Hafiz, the Sufi mystic, who said the following: even after all this time, the sun never told the earth, you owe me. And now look what happens with this kind of love. It lights up the whole sky. So this, I mean, beyond the very romantic story of the sun and the earth, I mean, it's a calling for all of us. We can all of us be in that state. It's directly proportional to our willingness to open up for that. And here we need to understand that that which we give, essentially we give ourselves. And the right way of relating it is that generosity creates abundance, which will create more generosity and more abundance. We often say, I would wait until I have enough so I can give. But you always have. And you should always give. You should always have this abundance of the heart. And then the more you give, the more you will have, the more you will be able to give forward. There are people who have seemingly a lot, but they are very stingy. And their stinginess makes them so that they are poor inside. And there are people who have literally little, very little, but they have an abundance of their heart, and thus they are genuinely rich inside. Now, you see, from a different perspective, we can even say that abundance is our obligation. And the quotes from the Bible about it is very interesting in the famous story of the talents. I'm not going into the whole story, but in the end of the story, Jesus is saying the following: whoever has will be given more, and he will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And the analogy here is the one who is awakened, the one who, because in this story, the one who got talents, there were coins, but here we can speak about the human talents that we have, like the talent of love, the talent of whatever profession we have, whether we are actors or singers or whatever their life we are doing, the talents that we have, what we manage to multiply in our being. The one who managed to multiply in his being will have more, and he will be abundance. He will acquire more and more and more. The one who didn't use what he has, the one who didn't mobilize the gifts that he is having, he will have less and less and less, and he will decay until it's even mentioned there, which is a very harsh quote, he said, he will be thrown to the outer darkness with a crushing of teeth. And it is, connecting also to the last story that we have, that hellish-like realms, it is because people stop giving. It's because people confine themselves in their very limited life, and due to that, they are in a hellish-like state. The existing is even like that, is a very poor way of living. Thus, it is extremely important to constantly have this attitude of paying it forward, that which we were given, the aspects that we were blessed, to constantly multiply them and bring them forward. One of the beautiful reasons why we live in such a world in which there are so many people is because through interacting with people, we have a chance to give it forward, even if people can also drive us crazy. Some people are fully enjoying the lockdown. Finally, they have a chance to be by themselves. People are also difficult, especially in a relationship. It's very difficult to be in a relationship, but it's the best way to learn how to give. It's the best way to learn to pay it forward. I can share with you now, we are all here in Tara. We're sitting by ourselves in a room for 3 months now. And constantly we have meeting and we think, how can we take the gift that we have received to pay it forward? I can tell you for myself, when I became a teacher, that was the main thing that came. I found all the beauties I have discovered in my heart through the practice of Tantra and Yoga, and I wanted to pay it forward. And I realized something very interesting. The more I paid it forward, the more I share it, the more I study it, the more I practice it, the more I live it, the more abundantly it comes in my life, and the more I feel like giving it. And this joy of giving and feeling constantly like a spring, which as if the more is being taken from, the more people drink from it, analogically, the more it has. This is exactly the sensation of being extremely abundant in our life. And a world that we all like to live in, that heaven is filled with people who are like that. And I would say it's an aspiration for all of us here. I hope it is an aspiration. If it wasn't now, maybe you can incorporate now this vision of a world that is filled like that. And with this comes also the concept that which we are withholding from the world withholds from us. That which we don't give, we don't find. And often people, it was one of the most common aspects that I hear when people come and ask for advice is, look, I feel like there's not enough love in my life. And if we look at that, it's not because the universe was like, this guy, let's not give him love. Or when they gave love in the skies, this guy was in the toilet and he arrived to worlds, he was devoid of love. How can it be? The universe is a magnificent mechanism of intelligence and wisdom. The people who do not have enough love in their life is because they don't give enough. And it's very hard to hear it. It takes away the victim idea that I blame the world, and brings you back to you. I need to look to generate that. If I don't have enough, I need to create it. If I withhold from the world love, no wonder the love withholds, or the world withholds love from me. So I need to go and to enter that wonderful fusion with the energies of love in that case. Or when people say, I don't have enough money, I give. And it's not the quantity, it's the quality of your giving. It was a beautiful story in the Bible when Jesus went there with a few of his disciples, and one very rich man gave many coins, and the next thing was the widow who gave just 1 or 2 coins. And he asked his disciple, who you think gave more? Obviously the widow. He didn't tell him obviously the widow. He probably used better language than that, but you understand. And the idea behind it is, it's not the quantity necessarily, it's the quality in which you give. And then when you realize that the quantity will follow the quality of yourself. So you will also be able to give maybe more in quantity, but first of all, notice the quality of giving in your life. And here we can say that the world is calling us to give from ourselves, and there's a beautiful story of a king. And that king went to, like any good king, and this is a good king. This time, he walked his kingdom, but dressed not as a king. And he dressed as a simple man, and he went and he asked from a merchant some wheat. And he asked him, "Can you give me some?" It's a kind man. And the owner there of the shop of grains looked at him and said, "This man." Well, he saw he didn't leave and said, "Okay, I will give you one." And he literally just gave him one. And the king took it, the king in disguise took it and left. In the end of the day, the merchant there, the grain merchant, went to close the thing, and he noticed that there was 1 grain of gold, replacing the grain that he took. And then he realized that that wasn't a simple man. That was the king, and of course, a magical king. And often in our life is calling us, "Can you give us some?" And we just give very little. And the little we gave became gold. But if we give much, that whole bag of wheat can become gold. And this is the real key of abundance, is to genuinely learn how to give. Now, you see, when we learn how to give in one area in our life, it will extrapolate in many areas of our life. For example, in the couple relationship, we learn this beauty of active love, of loving in a dynamic way, constantly giving love. In the material level, we will overcome our fears and we can abundantly give and be generous. Even in the time we dedicate to practice, we will dedicate more, we will feel better, then we will have even more energy to practice, and so forth. You see, this state of abundance in nature is like a spring, it overflows. And when we resonate with it, when we tune with that, when we align with that, it will manifest in all areas of our life, thus bringing beautiful heaven down to earth. Now, the directly linked to this is then the second part of the lecture. The second and third will be shorter, of course, they're just expansion of the first one, is how we can translate this and wisely integrate spiritual notion in day-to-day life and in the material world. I mean, there was a lot of dissonance in that, especially, I would say, in the Eastern tradition, in the form of Brahmacharya, when they describe the idea of following Brahman or the path of Brahman, they cut off a lot of this world because they said you have to dedicate it all, which is in essence true, but the way it was done often meant that people suppressed many of their needs. And it created a lot of inner tensions. And also in the West, there was a lot. If you want to dedicate yourself to a monastery, to go to so forth, you have to completely remove any interest in the material world and so forth. But the Tantric had a different vision, and also the Sufic in that perspective, and many other more esoteric aspects or esoteric teachers who said like this, and the Sufis wonderfully show it when they dance. The Sufis, when they dance, they have one hand facing the heavens and the other hand facing the earth, and they twirl. And they said that the man's role, and specifically the middle of it, the man's heart, is here to take from the heavens and to bring it to the earth, and to raise the earth and take it to the heavens. We are the link between the heaven and the earth. And this link that is the essence of who we truly are, is meaning that we can take those beautiful richness above and bring them to the world below, and to this material level that we all live in. And this idea of connecting it and not dismissing it is in the core of a very harmonious and integrated life. And interestingly here is the fact that when we do not engage with those energies, we suppress them, and it creates a lot of inner tensions in many practitioners that later on found that they cannot practice anymore because they feel that they don't really know what to do with this world. It still calls them too much. And here comes the wonderful analogy with the horse manure. wait until you hear it before you want to mean horse manure. So there were two farmers. Each one of them has a field, and one of them was not afraid to get dirty. And he took the horse manure, which is a wonderful fertilizer, and he mixed it with the soil to create wonderful yield there, whatever he was growing. The other one was, no, I don't want it, it smells, the horse poo essentially, like, and said, let me refrain from this, I will just put my seeds and so forth. Eventually, the one who refrained from using any of that, literal horse manure, unpleasant aspect of life, what he realized, that his field was very poor. And the other one who who wasn't afraid of using that, he had prosperity and abundance, and he had a lot of yield, and that could feed many, and he was prosperous. Now, the important thing here, or the analogy here, is that horse manure is this material level, and specifically the energies of money. Money is an energy like anything else. And those who are afraid to mix with that, many times their field will become very poor. Those which their field is only horse manure, life stinks. Logically, when it's not part of the soil, they're just focused on that, life stinks. But the one who wisely integrated, look at that. Their field is blossoming. And the wise tantric will integrate that horse manure there, they integrate this material level and all its needs. The fact that, yes, we do need to work, we do need to deal with those energies. We always remember the highest principles and we bring them down to our life. But we also take all those energies in our life, in this material level, and we bring them up because we realize they're here to sustain and support them. So they're not negating life, they're elements integrated in supporting life itself. And as a third part of this is how this is manifested also in the physical body. This body that we all received here, this magnificent machine, I don't know how many of you saw BBC Live. It's fascinating, by the way. Learn about your body. It's such a unique machine. We got this complex, much more complex than any Lamborghini that we ever devised, and magnificent. And this body has a very specific role in our life. It is here to be the vehicle, the temple of the spirit. And we need to take care of it like that. And we need to, even feed it accordingly, nurture it accordingly, take care of it accordingly, because it is meant to carry something magical, our soul. And it's meant to fulfill unique aspects in creation. It has a very clear meaning. Analogically, I like it like it's a carriage. Yeah, you have a carriage. If the carriage is very small and weak, and the horse is very tired, and every 30 seconds it needs to rest, it cannot carry your life to a triumphant existence. It cannot bring also other people with you so you can help them, because you're constantly withering away there. This is why it is so important, vitality in this, on the tantric path especially, because this body that we have, this vehicle that we are endowed with, the gift that we all have, needs to be used for that unique reason. And then we treat it like that. Now, it doesn't mean that now we only focus on the body and we only focus on eating and sleeping and making our nails and whatever other things. A vehicle is a vehicle, it's a tool. It's not the goal. Very important tool, but not the goal. It's the battery, but not the whole device. This battery needs to be strong. This battery needs to support. This battery has a very clear role in our existence, but it's just one part. And this very strong foundation that we give is not something that we aim to stay on, but something that we raise our house from. And in this analogy, we can say that only with a strong battery, specifically on the tantric path, we can make love for many hours. If you are very tired and your physical body is not in good shape, after half an hour, you throw the towel. That's it. You cannot do anymore. And in Tantra, We speak about prolonged lovemaking. An hour and a half, 2 is the beginning. You reach to 4, 5, and many hours of lovemaking. More about it in the webinars on Wednesday with Maria. So you need to have very good vitality for that. You need to have very good vitality to also engage in a relationship, to be there, to give to the other one. You need to have very strong vitalities and strength to keep a meditation for a very long time, because otherwise after 10, 15 minutes you go, because you cannot keep that. Or high spiritual state, if you don't have a very good vitality, you cannot sustain and support them. Thus, this physical vitality that also manifests abundantly makes it so that you can always give. And it doesn't mean to be fat, it means to use this body for what it's meant for. I mean, Mother Teresa, you saw Mother Teresa, she was like 5 foot, I think, 5'2", 5'3". I mean, she's a mini woman. But you know how much she did with her body? How much she worked? Because she realized, she took care minimally, but she realized that she gave that body away. She treated it as a temple. It could serve hundreds in Kolkata. And it's very interesting because we always say, vitality means going to the gym and eating 50 eggs a day. No. Treat your body wisely. Each body will have its adequate diet, will have exactly what it needs. We need to be attentive to that and give it its rightful place to our physical body and to our physical existence. Now, before we move to the exercise, I will read what you said. You said nice things. But now, how about, let's do an exercise. And then after the exercise, we can have a bit more questions and answers about abundance, about vitality, about the material plane, yeah? Thumbs ups from those who are in. You ready? Good. I got at least one thumb up. Enough for me. Good. So this exercise is having as a clear goal, it's a guided meditation. I mean, it's part of a more complex exercise that hopefully we will do together one day in person, because it involves a lot of interaction. So in this version, we will aim, or the goal of this exercise is to realize the richness of our heart. And you will have to have with you also a pen and paper. If not a pen and paper, you can write on anything else, but something to write on for the exercise. Good. So let's prepare. We prepare for a moment with the eyes closed. Taking a few deep breaths and quieting down the mind by centering in the heart. Become aware how this form of breathing and this attention is calling for a contemplation, for an introspection, looking within. So once more, with our eyes closed, we become aware how rich we are within. Becoming aware of all the gifts that God has placed in our heart. Feeling them abundant in our heart. Feeling they're planted with the nuances. Contemplate each and every gift in a distinct way. Notice their nuances, the way they manifest. Becoming aware how the gifts that you are now aware of are radiating from your heart, very much like the sun is shining in all directions. You can even re-evoke moments in your life when those gifts manifest. So we feel how the gifts that we have, that God has put in our heart, is radiating in all directions like the sun. We can even evoke moments in which we felt those gifts manifesting in and through our being. Feel how you shift from receiving to giving, and this awareness brings a sense of abundance within. And now take the next few minutes to write down those gifts that you give, that you have been receiving and you are giving forward, so you can write them down on the paper. And now those who want, you can either write it on the chat or unmute your mic and share with us some of the gifts that you have received, that you feel that you have received in this life and you are now giving them forward. Either write it down, you can take your time, or unmute your mic and share them abundantly. Wisdom.
Love and creativity.
Hi, son. Yes, health. Yeah, great gift. Love. We always, creativity, love, generosity, friendship. talent like drawing, dancing, and health, relationship, connections, opportunities, generosity, light, empathy. How many components of heaven we have here? Intimacy, grace. Yeah. Using our innate talents for the best outcomes for all. Kindness. Let you continue doing that. Don't stop while I speak. But as a conclusion to all this, imagine the world like a great jigsaw. And this magnificent jigsaw could reach to its perfection only if each and every piece of the jigsaw is in its rightful place and it is manifesting, or otherwise shining, its image which is on it perfectly. And this world, I mean, if we can extrapolate from that, this world, if all aspects, if all the jigsaw puzzle would put in the rightful place and will connect to all the others, then this world will be like the heaven which we spoke about before. And each one of us is this piece of a jigsaw in this magnificent of creation. And our role is to take all those talents that we have, which is the components of our piece in the jigsaw, to manifest them fully so we can be part of that universal harmony. It's like a magnificent symphony. We need to take care of our role. Whatever trumpet there we are playing, we need to be there, the best trumpet player, whatever. So the symphony will be perfect. And we can do that only when we bring those innate potentials, talents that we have abundantly to manifest in our life. And this is the great mystery of abundance. It teaches us so many aspects about ourselves, and it will reveal to us great secrets in how we can relate to the world around us. Now, if you have any questions, either generally about abundance or more specifically about the material world or about vitality. See, I would warmly recommend you to continuously read the chat, because it's wonderful to see how many qualities we're all sharing here. If you have questions, either unmute your mic or write them on the chat. First, can you move it so I can see the question? Does abundance imply giving also ourselves? Of course. You see, the biggest gift that we can give is us. It's the most magnificent sacrifice that we can offer is ourselves, our time, our life to something higher than ourselves. And that actually is one of the keys of having an enormous vitality and an enormous ability to give. You see, when we give to something small, we tune in with something small, and the energetic interaction is of a low quantity. When we give ourselves to something bigger than us, and eventually when we give ourselves totally to God, we're tuning in with that amount of energies. And then the quantity of energy that is accessible within us is immense. Like the example with Mother Teresa, she didn't just give herself for a few kids. She saw God in those few kids in Calcutta. And then she had an immense vitality and she moved mountains. I mean, this 5-foot Albanian nun moved mountains. How did she do that? Because she was giving herself fully, because she saw God there. And this is how all this manifests through her. Or Gandhi. Gandhi was, they called him the naked fakir. He was nothing. He was probably, 50, 60 kilos. But he dedicated himself to God. He gave himself totally to that. So what happened from that? He got all this vitality and he managed, the amount of energy that he moved. He moved 1 billion Indians to arrange so many people. It takes huge force within himself. And that manifests because of that. So, you see, this is a great secret. And the more we will learn to dedicate ourselves to higher aspects, the more energetically we will tune in with those aspects, with the amount of energy accessible there. So when we genuinely learn how to give ourselves on something like that, this is where we will connect also to those realms, and we will be able to give, because this is what we are connected to. If we give to something which is of a very small nature, we will have very little as well. It will always be proportional. I need, if you ask a question, because we have a lot here on the chat, if you can just finish it with a question mark. What about people who you give to but drain you? Where their energy and generosity does not match your own. What should you do? So first of all, there are people who are very stuck in being a victim, or very stuck in being, to a certain extent, that they're like energetic vampires. This is exactly how it works. They are there just to take. And you see, giving is not a blind force. It's a very wise force. You give in the right measure to the right person in the right time, their right need. And to some people, what they rightly need right now is for you to tell them, get out of my life. It's a very honest thing to say. And I know it sounds pretty shocking because they say, no, but we have to give them, because now love is blind. But this is slightly naive. You need to give them in the rightful place, and also to give to those who generally are open to receive it. Giving to people which are not open to receive it shows a lack of empathy. And the lack of empathy makes it so that we are handicapped in the way we give. We're very flat in the way we give. Actually, giving is a very nuanced way. You have to give in the right way. It's giving in the way you relate to other people. It's very intrinsic as a knowledge, as a wisdom, and you need to know exactly how to give. There's a famous joke of why it took 4 Boy Scouts to help the old woman pass the street. But because she didn't want. And often we want very much to give, but the other one is not open for it. So you don't give them. Or the other one is super needy, and you don't give them. Most plants die, not because of underwatering, but because they've been watered too much. I was a gardener for many years. I know that. I saw the dead plants. And it's very interesting. People just don't, they see them dying a little bit, and they try to pour more and more water. They kill them there. They suffocate them. Not very wise, isn't it? So we have to be very attentive also to ourselves, the way we give ourselves, the way we treat our body, all those aspects. We need to be, it's a matter of precision in the way of giving. And we learn this only when we start to tune in with this great mystery which is in our heart. Can you scroll it down and see what else we have? Any other questions? If your energy is low, Should you focus on restoring yourself, or does focus on something bigger than yourself energize you? If your energy is low, often it's a combination of the two. First, you didn't really take care of yourself, and often you didn't connect yourself to something higher than yourself. So it's a combination in which you need to understand the needs of yourself. For example, eat well, sleep well, take care of resting, nature, and all those aspects. Very supportive human interaction, for sure, one thing. Second thing is, and it's very interesting, when we give and we put ourselves at service, we find that we have a lot more energy than what we expected to have. And this is something I experimented a lot myself with. And I noticed that the more I give of myself to something which I genuinely believe, that something which is genuinely important, I have a lot of energy inside of me. I mean, it comes to the fact when you really love someone, you find yourself that you have a lot of energy to give them. For example, you, in the lovemaking, you can last for many hours because you love them very much and you want to manifest that love for them. Or I'll give another example. Many of you know the Tantra Yoga Center here in London. We worked a lot here. And I had the privilege to be one of the workers. And I was here every day, 7 days a week, for 3 months without a day's break. Sorry for the Jews, we worked Saturday. Sorry for the council, we worked on also Sunday, even if it was quiet, but we worked 7 days a week. And I was even fasting 2 days a week out of that. Thursday and Sunday, I fast. I don't eat in those days. And I was pleasantly surprised about this body, that it had a lot of energy. Because I felt generally I was every day doing it as an act of karma yoga, giving for myself for that, and I could have a lot of energy to work and to be here and to be part of it. Yes, I mean, the body was tired at night. I would fall asleep before I would put my head on the cushion, but I would wake up every morning with brand new energy to continue this amazing venture. And for me, it was a great discovery of how much this physical body can carry. This physical body was able to carry so much because this action was consecrated, was offered for something much bigger than myself. I mean, who knows what will be with me? But this yoga center that is hosting in these times no one except a camera, but is meant to host all of this wonderful community that we are creating here together. It's, for me, was a service to Supreme. And then I felt this as a service, and I could feel because of it, I was constantly, daily was given energy, and I wasn't the only one. I can just speak for myself, but we were a few of us who was working here like that, and we were all surprised of the amount of energy that kind of was accessible to us. Where did it come from? Well, because of aligning ourselves with something higher than ourselves. Yes, more gratitude is definitely comes from here. It's an integral part. When you are feeling that abundance and you're grateful for, more will be given to you. It's a very big topic that deserves an hour for itself. I mean, it's definitely connected to that. So we have a question here. Hi. Could you give an example of giving a right amount at the right time, etc.? How do we recognize vampires? Yes, it's not as harsh as vampires that you see on Netflix, but I mean, they're not as explicit, but energetically they are as bad. And isn't it too harsh to tell them, and instead we can help them and to transform? Yes, of course we help them to transform. So let's start first question. How do we know what is the right amount of energy in the right time? This is through empathy. There's no equation for it, but the equation of the heart, feeling it. You connect to the other one and you aim to feel what they are ready to take. I mean, if the rain is too much, it floods. It's not nice for the earth. And if it's too little, it's dry. It's not nice to the earth. So you need to be like, in this case, the rain that we had today abundantly, that gives in the right measure to the land. So that is, you need to be empathically attentive to that. And how do you recognize those people who vampirize you, people you should give them, is how you feel energetically drained after interactions with them. Feeling energetically drained, the energy doesn't, as Einstein rightly said, energy doesn't disappear, it just changes form. And you have less energy because they have more energy, because they suck that energy from you. Now, if you are abundant, you will realize that it doesn't mean that you give it to all the vampires, to all those who don't genuinely deserve it. Those who do not deserve it, you wisely withhold, because they don't need it. You don't help them by doing that. And you don't just say them in the face, by the way, you're a vampire. Of course not. If you have some love, and most people do not know that they are energetically vampirizing. I mean, it's not like, oh, let me go to you so I can vampirize you from energy because you're much nicer than me. I mean, usually they don't do it like this. They're constantly nagging, complaining, draining you energetically with endless talk. Those are the ways in which they use it. I mean, it's not like they suck your veins. So, and then you need to tell them, hey, look, this attitude, it's unhealthy. Look at yourself. How about you realize how abundant you have in your heart? Because all forms of energetic vampirism comes from people who believe they are beggars. You tell them, hey, by the way, you're not a beggar. Let's try and do that. Write down your qualities, write down the gifts, try to give more, and then you shift them. Without telling them in your face in a text, I just been in a lecture, and by the way, you're a vampire, don't call me ever again. I mean, it might be pretty harsh for some people. So this is how you transform them. What about giving abundantly but still having clear boundaries? You see, the clear boundaries are a mental formation. Giving abundantly is a force of the heart. By mixing the two, we diminish the domain of the heart. So the boundaries that are given are naturally given from the heart. You know what is needed to be given. And I can share with you from myself, we are in a conversation with someone and you kind of feel how much you should give, what advice, how you should do it. You just need to feel that. And those boundaries are genuine, but they are not mental boundaries. They're not confinement that are solely made by the mind, but it's a wisdom of the heart that is manifesting there. It is difficult to put boundaries when giving. Yeah, because you try with your mind to put boundaries when giving. When the heart, it doesn't put actually boundaries. It just has a wisdom and it says, until here. No, it's enough. It just knows. There is a very clear wisdom there. I mean, it's a whole topic for itself, the wisdom of the heart, which is, of course, connected with this. Yael Fleming, I'd like to learn to ask for and receive. Well, it is the same. It's even the same. Usually giving was in connection with the hands. And it is the same hands that give are the hands in which you receive in. And it is not by chance. Those who will learn to give will also learn how to receive. And we all want to learn to receive better. Receiving sounds fantastic. Yeah, it is fantastic to receive. Try to receive the pouring bliss. Try to receive God's grace in your being. We all, sounds like a great thing. But how you learn how to receive that? You learn through giving. You use your hands for giving, and then it will be trained also in receiving. You increase the capacity, analogically, the container. The more you are able to give, that's the more you will be able to receive. I guess it is the fear of giving too much. Can we ever give too much? Yeah. You can. But essentially, in essence, I mean, there is a way to give endlessly. Until then, there are gradation. And you do give, but also in accordance to how much the other one can receive. And you will see with the world or with a higher cause, then you can give endlessly there. And you can, that one is, you can practice that. But there's always, you need to be very empathic with the situation to notice all the nuances so it is integrated. Otherwise, you might burn yourself or you give in an unintegrated way. And it is very much like the rain that floods. And it's not healthy for the land or the overwatering of a flower. Another question from Sir. A lot of time when someone gives me something, I automatically feel like I owe them something. Well, this could be explained by the fact that we have a very linear way of thinking. And the idea of I owe them something is very limitative. I mean, when we give abundantly, we don't have that. When we give abundantly, we don't create expectations to receive and to receive. And when we don't give abundantly, we give with an expectation. And then when someone gives us, our mindset is projecting on them exactly how we relate to giving. And we say, oh, they probably expect now something from me. And the fault is in us. I mean, if we give abundantly, which means that we will have no expectations, then we will also, when someone gives us, we won't feel obliged to give them something in return. It's not because we're unpolite. You don't feel obliged to. You might give them something, but not because of obligation. Giving out of obligation is taking all the joy of giving. It's hurting our soul. We should avoid it by all means. You do not give out of obligation. You give out of the joy of giving. That's the right way of doing that. Another question from Thea Stefanos. Is there a typical period, time between when you start giving and when you start receiving? A typical period of time? No, it's not a linear form of time. And it might not be from the same person. There's no... sometimes you give something to someone, and then by the wisdom of the universe, you receive something from somewhere else. So what? You are in that... And you will see it's a very complex interaction. So it's not a linear time. In the spirit of this, we would like also to invite you for our online summer retreat that will be in the end of the month. It is dedicated to living through giving. So we won't repeat what we said now, but it is extrapolating about the unique occult law of giving and how it is creating for us a unique chance to transform. You have it now on your screen. And I will be there as part of the presenters. We have Maria, Morgan, and a few other teachers who will be involved. It will be a wonderful journey in which we will deepen that. And especially in this period, is of a paramount importance. I mean, one of the things that we learned in this period, share with you for myself, is how valuable is our a genuine state of community, a genuine connection between us humans on this world, on this planet. And inspired by that story of heaven and hell, the idea of living through giving is the way we will bring paradise in this world, and in a world which has now so much, or often sufferance and confusion, and with the whole lockdown, pandemic, and what we see, this is of, I would say, extreme importance. There will be some wonderful esoteric keys and fundamental tools that we will share during that week. So you're most invited to join us in bringing heaven a bit closer to Earth. And I also remind you that we are a charity. We are very much enjoying to give. And all our actions are done as a charitable act. And if you want to support this, you can donate. Of course, do it not because you feel obliged. In the spirit of what we spoke, only, I mean, it is a beauty of the heart, and it's also here, it's not a matter of quantity, but it's the quality, the energetic quality of the act of giving. And this is actually, I can tell you as an anecdote, when we built this center, we had 150 volunteers. 150 people came to help. Mothers of students came to cook for us. I mean, we reached to that. And this place that we are now sitting in, which many of you visited, is existing because of that act of giving. And we can pay it forward. And every action that we do in that way, paying it forward, is enriching us. And this is what we are giving to the world. So I would like to thank you very much for your attention. It's a great pleasure to see such enthusiasm on the chat and to have such a lively connection. And I feel very grateful for having this chance to be here with you. And I look forward to see you in our next classes, webinars. We have, as you saw, 2-3 a week, and we'll keep you posted. So stay tuned. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Foca.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Foca.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Foca.
Thank you, Becca. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Maria. Bye, Alina.
Thanks, Foca.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.